welcome back, as the case may be, and most likely is if you're watching this video, but who knows, this could be your first time here. Welcome, I'm Christine E. Schulze, aka the Elvish author, and this is the fantabulous Isaac, my boyfriend, as he does like to join me for these videos from time to time, and today we're just going to have a little discussion about Avatar. So I just finished watching, reacting to the entire series for the first time, and some of you guys in previous seasons had asked if I could do a recap of my thoughts on the season, and I just had never really felt like I needed to do that. I hadn't really felt like there was more I needed to say than I had already said like during watching the show. But I had the idea to do this video, and Isaac agreed it would be a good idea because in having time to think more about the finale of Avatar, and also talk to my friend Adam, who told me to watch the series, and also talk with you, who really has had this journey with me the entire time because he is the one who has been editing all of the videos, so him also getting to rewatch the series in that sense and follow along with my thoughts and everything. We now have some thoughts on the finale. We both have some thoughts on the finale. So,
yeah. But first, as an overall, how did you feel about the show?
Overall, the show is a very good show. Very solid, very good world building for sure.
Great world.
A lot of good character building, a lot of good character arcs, especially Zuko. I want to go into this saying that I have no complaints about Zuko or his storyline or his character arc whatsoever, nor does anybody I talk to.
No, he probably had the best story.
Yeah.
Arc.
Yeah,
overall.
You agree it's great. Adam, who, like I said, is his favorite show, so he should be biased, but he has no complaints about it. No one I've talked to has any complaints about the Zuko,
I don't. It's just that dangling mom thing.
But that's not even Zuko.
Really Zuko.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. I'm going to play about that. I already complained about it, so.
But not to say that everybody else didn't have as good. I mean, I felt Katara and Sokka's story was really strong.
Yeah, they definitely had growth as well. Sokka grows into a man. He grows into a more capable leader and has more confidence in himself. Katara also grows in a lot of ways. She's able to let go of some anger and some hatred that she has, which is important, and goes through some healing. And of course, she's still in that process. But so yeah, I agree. They a lot of them have good character arcs and character building. But Zuko, though, okay, but he's still the best. So I think he's still the best. It's like a universally agreed thing that Zuko might be the best.
Yeah.
So not looking forward to how how this new actor might mess him up. We'll find out in the live action version.
They don't need to do it, though.
They don't need to make it. They don't need to make it. They don't need to remake a show that's already perfectly good as is. Absolutely not. So overall, great show. From an fantasy author standpoint, really good show, really solid in a lot of ways. But we're going to talk today specifically on our thoughts on the finale itself, the 4-part finale itself.
Talk about if they stuck the landing.
If they stuck the landing, yes. Because, so the reason that we're doing this video and just sharing these extra thoughts is initially when I had watched it, I had said to myself, this was a good finale, but I didn't feel like they were my favorite episodes. I didn't feel like, I couldn't pinpoint why, but I didn't feel maybe quite as strong of an emotional connection or just quite as strong a connection to them as I did some other episodes in the show. And someone I was even talking to, I don't remember, it might have actually been somebody at work, because I have a girl at work that we talk about Avatar as well, especially now that I finished watching the show. And she even mentioned episodes like The Invasion, that are midway in the season. And even those, I think, have maybe more of a overall pull to them than these last episodes did in terms of the stakes and that kind of little that emotion and that just having those kind of suspenseful moments. Now again, I do want to go into this saying that I do think that the last episodes are good and solid in many ways. But I think for me, the main issue as a creator especially, but also as a viewer, with the last episodes is too much Deus Ex Machina. Particularly in the last couple of episodes. You have things like the lion turtle, who is really cool, and I love him because of his aesthetics, and I think he's a really neat creature, but he comes out of nowhere. So we could start there, talking about the lion turtle. He comes out of nowhere. I forget, was it you who were saying if he had some connection to the avatars, that would have been...
Yeah, because I know we talked a little bit before I started editing the episode, and I was like, well, like in my mind, I was sure that they connected it with his avatar.
Not particularly.
Yeah. I thought, well, maybe you missed that or something. So while I was editing the first talk with Roku, and Roku's like, I don't know
where we are. I don't know what's happening.
What is this thing? You know, I'm like, well, I feel like that was a missed opportunity. I think it would have explained the sea turtle more, but you know.
I think there's even little details. Like, I understand, because that's why I asked you and I asked some other people, was Avatar only intended to have 3 seasons? Because I would say overall, the show has not felt rushed. But the ending felt a little bit rushed. Not super rushed, not horribly rushed, not like Game of Thrones season 8 rushed by any means, but it definitely felt a little bit rushed. And it felt to me like maybe they didn't have quite enough time to develop the ideas they wanted to, but everybody has said no, it was only ever intended to have 3 seasons. So then I kind of have to, if that's true, I kind of have to throw it back on the writers and be like, they should have planned just a little bit better.
Should have been planned a little bit more. I feel like everything just fell into place perfectly.
Yeah.
Everybody easily got to where they needed to be at the end to do their final showdowns.
And little things could have fixed it.
Yeah, it's little.
So, like, even with the lion turtle, like, if there had been some connection, you know, I liked that Aang's previous forms, that the past avatars came and talked to him. That's not new. We've had that come up at other times in this series. So I like that they came to him and he was seeking different wisdom and trying to figure things out with him. That was very good. So if they had somehow connected the lion turtle to that, like if the avatars, for example, had summoned the lion turtle to have this talk with him and then sent him on his way to meet Ozai, anything that made it seem not come out of the blue would have been better.
Just fine.
Unfortunately, that's not the only Deus Ex Machina that we have. So Aang at this point has lost his powers to go into the Avatar state, which, to be honest, I kind of even either forgot or didn't recognize that he had lost those powers. I've only seen the show once, so I'm sure rewatching I would have realized, like, oh, he doesn't have his powers at this point. And so then Adam pointed out, and you and I talked about this, that the way that he gets his powers back is by slamming into a rock in the point in his back where Azula had, like, attacked him. And that opens up the chakras, and then all of a sudden he has his powers back. Now, the only thing I had said about this that was positive was that that would be accurate for acupuncture and Eastern medicine. I've had enough acupuncture and net therapy and different things that have to do with different points of the body that absolutely, that probably would have reopened his chakras. However, in that moment, it happening that way does also feel like a Deus Ex Machina.
It just happened.
It just happens. And like Adam pointed out, if he had, like, hit the rock and just a little bit to the right or the left or whatever, he probably would have died instead. So it definitely was just a stroke of luck, of fate, that, like, oh my goodness, he happens to knock into this rock and then go into the Avatar state. You know, another thing you and I had discussed that I had also, you know, talked about with Adam was even the possibility of maybe Aang never gets his Avatar state back, and instead he has to use all of the things that he's learned in order to figure out how to overcome Ozai. And that might be what's a little bit disappointing about it, too, with him just getting the Avatar state just knocked back into him, and then he's, now we know he's going to defeat Ozai. Because
that cheapens the Avatar state a little bit.
Well, and it kind of cheapens Aang's journey a little bit, because he's gone throughout this thing learning and growing and learning so much about himself. Not just with the elements, for sure, like learning the different elements, but then, like, learning so much about himself as a person. And then instead of, like, really making those choices at the end, he just gets the Avatar state thrust back into him, and then he, like, overcomes, you know, Ozai. And even the energy bending, like, even that's problematic, because that, again, feels like a last-minute Deus Ex Machina. If we had learned about energy bending throughout the series, or even in just a couple earlier points in the series, to where it was something that Aang could consider and think about, because, you know, as you were saying, like, we have to see him learn how to do all his other powers. He has a struggle learning how to water bend and then earth bend and then learn the true meaning of fire bending. And so for this energy bending just to come out of nowhere.
I mean, it seems like it was just given to him by the sea.
By the lion turtle, who again comes out of nowhere. Yeah. So I think if even one of those things, like maybe if it was just the rock or just the lion turtle or just energy bending, it would have been as bad. But to have all these piled on top of each other is a lot.
Even if we didn't see it throughout the series, if they would have connected the sea lion with his conversations with his past selves, if he would have gained like just a little piece of knowledge from each of them during the conversation, and he came up with it himself at the end, if he would have seen that, that would have been much better than, oh, look, I can do this now. You know, it would have felt better. And that goes back to the phrase that I told you, that one of my editors, you know, again, I'm an author, and one of my editors that I've been working with recently
told me a line that has really stuck with me that I'm going to try to continue to think about as I edit my old books and then, in the future write new ones. She said that for the most part, in most cases, suspense is better than surprise. So the energy bending, maybe the creators wanted that to be this like cool last minute thing that like, oh, whoa, we never thought about that before. Unfortunately, it fell a little bit short because it would have been better for us to kind of have known about it and kind of have that suspense of like, is this something Aang's going to do, or is this something that he's going to pull off, or how will this happen, as opposed to just surprise, well, that was cool, but it feels like you guys made it up at the last second, and the show was so good otherwise. Like the storytellers were so good otherwise in tying things together, relating to past episodes, drawing in little bits of information that you hadn't heard from in a while. They were so good at tying things together that we know they had the capability. And I think that makes it a little bit more frustrating as well to know that they had that capability, but they just fell short with it. So again, like, we're obviously mostly talking about Aang's journey and Aang's arc, which didn't upset me quite as much as Adam. Aang is his favorite character. Zuko was mine, so I was like not as mad at the show because I'm actually not even mad at the show at all. I think that it did fall short in some cases in the finale. Whereas other things were really brilliant. You've got the final battle between Azula and Zuko. Like, you've got Zuko's reunion with Iroh. There's just so many things that are also very beautiful and very well done in the finale. Unfortunately, our main character, I think, was probably sold a little bit short. There were also a couple other things that also might have been rushed, but honestly, it'd be more a matter of like, well, let me go back and rewatch the show at some point and see. In episode 17, you have like it's that funny episode where they're recapping everything, but then they do bring up a couple of points like, hey, are Aang and Katara even together? And honestly, it was a good point to wonder that, because we had seen little moments with them, like we saw them kiss at the invasion, and then you kind of thought that was going to go somewhere. And then they kind of just don't do a lot with it, which I realized that there's a lot of other things going on. There are other moments where...
I think we saw, even Aang's frustration, that nothing has come out of that.
We see Katara threaten to kill Zuko if she F's with Aang, but we didn't see a ton of their romance, like, after that point.
No.
And so I think even them at the end felt a little bit rushed, not because we didn't know that they had feelings throughout the series, but because they could have just even shown a little bit more of that and built that up a little bit more consistently, I think.
Yeah.
But,
romance wasn't, like...
And I know that's not the focus of the show by any
But, I mean, they did a really good job with Sokka's two
Sokka had two romances. Even honestly, I even felt more connected to Zuko and May than I did.
Zuko and May.
And you don't even see them as much, but the moments you get with them, I think, are good enough to where like it builds their relationship. Whereas I just didn't get that as much with Aang and Katara, and I'm still fine with them being shipped. Like, don't get me wrong. I think we could have had a little bit more development with it, or I still wouldn't have been mad if they had gone with my original, which is that I thought they were going to be like brother and sister for like the entire first season. I didn't even know that there was any, like, rewatching it, I can tell like, oh, Aang did like her, but like initially on my first watch of the series, I think I don't know, something like the whole first season at least, I was just like, oh, they like each other, or oh, they like each other.
You reference them being brother and sister a lot.
I think I sure do. In
my head while I was editing, I was like, oh, just wait.
So yeah, I don't think I necessarily have a problem with them being together. I think maybe we could have seen it a little bit more. And like you said, romance isn't the focus of the show, but we know that they can do romance okay, because you felt it between Sokka and Suki, and even between Sokka and Yua, even though they knew each other for 2 seconds, and it was still tragic when she turned into the moon spirit, and she comes back into it, So interesting that, main characters and main relationships like that, though, are hard to do. I've had my book Blood Maiden. Some people really love my main couple, and other people think that I did the side couple like way better. So, sometimes it just happens.
Yeah.
So, maybe that's just
all the time. Sometimes the side couple is just more interesting than
I think that was also this. I think the side couple in my book is a little bit more interesting to some people, and I think some of these side couples as well. So that, like I said, might have been a little bit rushed. Not nearly as, frustrating as all the Deus Ex Machina with Aang overcoming Lord Ozai, which again, that battle looked brilliantly. They
visuals
really,
of the last episodes were awesome.
The visuals of the last episodes were really good. They definitely pulled out the rest of their budget, and they're like, we're going to put the rest of our budget into these 2 episodes and make it look really visually on point. But it's always disappointing and frustrating for me when you have something that looks really cool but doesn't quite have the substance that you would like it to, you know? I'm sure they wanted Aang to be one-on-one with Ozai, and that was another thing that there was some conflict over as I was talking to people, is that one of Aang's lessons that he learns throughout the show is to not have to do things alone and to be able to face things together with people that care about him. And then he does go on to face Ozai alone, which I think would have had to happen in the end anyway. But maybe there could have been a point where he started out with his friends. I don't know. I'm not quite as upset on that point. Well, I guess I'm not upset about anything. I'm not quite as, have as much thoughts on that point, although I can understand where other people are coming from with that. Well, I am upset about one thing, but we'll get to that anyway. Let's see. Anything else that was rushed? The only other thing that might have been a tad rushed, but again, I think if I rewatched the show, I might feel differently on this, was Azula's madness, her going crazy.
I think it was rushed.
I think they could have spent, again, and this isn't things that are majorly rushed, I think they could have just spent, if they had just a few more episodes, I feel like it would have just felt a tad more fleshed out.
More episodes.
Because it's pretty toward the end that, we have the Boiling Rock episodes where they go to rescue Sokka's dad and some other people. And, but those are episodes 14, 15. I remember those episodes getting over even, and me thinking to myself, okay, how is this going to end? We are so close to the end, and we have no plan whatsoever as to how this is going to actually end. And at that point, May, you guys, somebody yelled at me for calling her Ma. You guys didn't yell, but you pointed out that I was mispronouncing her name. And the reason I mispronounce her name all the time is because her name is spelled the same as My Valentine from Yu-Gi-Oh! And true. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was such my show for a while that it's just ingrained in me that name is Mai, but her name is May. I do know this. May and Ty Lee, that's the episode where they turn on her, just because even they decide that they've had that threshold where her actions are just enough. And someone did point out, one of you guys did point out that May was just kind of along for the ride, she says that when she joins up with Azula initially, and Ty Lee is with Azula because she threatened her, basically. So what Azula, unfortunately, I actually have no dislike toward Azula whatsoever. And the reason for that is her character and her story is really such a tragedy. She has no chance in her young life to really know and experience true relationships. She thinks that ruling Ty Lee and May by fear, she thinks that they are loyal to her, and she just doesn't understand. She just doesn't understand what actual relationships are like, and that's not really her fault. It's how she was brought up. Zuko was brought up in the same household, but thankfully with him having a closer bond with his mom, he kind of turned out more like her in that influence. And unfortunately, Azula just had a lot of her dad. At the
same time, just like Zuko thanked his father at the end for banishing him, that helped him grow. If he would have stayed there, he probably would have ended up just like Azula. He might have ended
up the same way. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So, yeah, so in that sense, Azula's story for me really is a tragedy. And so I don't really actually hold anything against her. You can dislike Ozai because the man was, which even him, though, was brought up a certain way. Even he, definitely he's the villain of the story, but he's also a victim of his society and, how his... how his kingdom, their values came to be and everything.
Yeah, we got to see how the seed of him began.
Right. So definitely Ozai needed to be taken out. I wouldn't call him so much a tragedy, but I would say, it's unfortunate, that how he was even raised and how the kingdom was, the direction they were being led in at that point. I liked how somebody pointed out in a recent comment that we learned that the origination of fire bending had to do with dancing and dragons, and how you have that one episode where Aang gets to be a kid and goes to the fire school, and you learn that dancing itself is illegal. Is the foundation of true fire bending has been made illegal. That's how backward they've become in their true ideals and their original values and everything. And unfortunately, that gets instilled into Ozai. who then passes it on. So generational curse, generational trauma. Curse. Like, honestly, Ozai is a victim of that. That still does not make him not a victim or a villain. He definitely is a villain. But unfortunately, at that point, it kind of was too late for him. Those kind of people, I think, can be turned around, but it takes a lot.
It takes a lot of time.
And I don't think that it's likely for him to ever be turned around, unfortunately. Azula, I think, could have been, and I don't know if you can have a mental break and come back from that. So I would prefer that at some point maybe she could have some sense of healing, and she's always going to have mental illness, I think, from everything she went through. Yeah. But she is a tragic character, and I would like to see something better for her. We can now talk about the one thing that I'm actually upset about. All the other stuff has been things that, like, yeah, that's frustrating. They should have done that better, and I can understand why other people were really annoyed about that. But it's it's hard to do endings of stories. It's hard to, and so I understand that, even though they should have done, I think, some things a little bit better and built some things up a little bit better, and not had so much Deus Ex Machina. I can understand it, forgive it, whatever. I cannot forgive the fact that we never find out what happens to Zuko's mom. Okay, now some of you have said, and I've heard from other people, that question is answered in the comics. Mm-hmm. That is not an excuse. That is bad storytelling, and let me tell you why. Okay, number one, the entire rest of the show is great at tying up loose ends. Like I said, they'll call back to something that happened episodes ago, a detail that happened episodes ago, and they'll tie it into an episode way out in the future. They're very good at tying up a lot of loose ends. They're very good at completing a lot of story threads.
They are.
So that tells me, number one, that they were capable of doing this with Zuko's mom. They just chose not to. And it being in a comic is not an excuse, because that is bad creator etiquette. You do not start a story thread in, say, a book, a movie, a TV show, a comic, whatever it is, and then in order to finish that story thread or to get those answers, you do not then force somebody to get those answers in a completely different medium. You don't create a show and then force somebody to go read a comic to finish that story thread. It's just, to me, bad creator etiquette. What if that person doesn't even like to read? What if that person hates comics? What if that person doesn't have access to comics, and now they just never get to have the rest of that story completed? I just think it's bad creator etiquette. One of y'all sue me if I ever do that, okay? Because it's not okay. So I'm just saying, I don't really think that that's okay. And even then, like, we know that she's been banished, and I think, so there was an episode several episodes ago, the one where Zuko's confronting his dad, and he does ask, like, what happened to mom? And his dad's talking about, like, okay, like, well, you know what she did to your grandpa, and so she was banished. And even though that wasn't a completely satisfactory answer, it at least was an answer. We know she's been banished, if Ozai is telling the truth. Like, we're assuming that that's what happened. She's been banished, but she's still alive. Even that would have been more conclusive and more satisfactory than them then, in the last episode, having Zuko confront his father and say, "Where's mother?" and then just cut black end scene. Mm-hmm. Because that just felt very incomplete. I would have rather them just left it as she got banished a few episodes ago. We never learned what happened to her. Then for him to then pose the question again, and Ozai doesn't even answer it. I think that was just poorly done. I think it was poorly done.
I agree.
Or like, I think, was it you who had said, like, even if we just got a 2-second thing of, like, Zuko plans to go look for his mom in the future, or something that made it felt like it just didn't feel like it was concluded. It felt like they purposely opened it up,
left dangling there in the air.
And again, if it was answered in another TV series, even that wouldn't be as annoying. Like, I still think you should answer those questions within the same series. However, let's say that there's going to be another series that was all about that. Okay, that kind of makes more sense to me. But then, like I said, to force people to go out and buy a comic when maybe they don't want to, or they don't have access to it, or maybe they, like I said, they really don't like reading, or whatever the case is, not okay.
No, not okay.
It's not okay. So that's my one and actually only major gripe about the entire series of Avatar is Zuko's mother. Like, pretty much.
That's a legitimate one, though.
Yeah. And again, I think that I'm harsher on the show for that, too, because they're so good at tying up so many other things that I knew that they were capable. It felt very intentional.
Yeah.
That we're going to open up this story thread and then not complete it at all. And that actually just doesn't set well with me whatsoever. So if I had, like I said, any complaints about the entire series as a whole, that's my only one. But I talked about that throughout my reactions, like throughout the entire series. I talked about this. I expected a freaking answer.
I think in your opening to that episode, you're like, I hope they answer this question.
Like, we're going to see his mother.
And then...
We're going to see her. We're going to see her. So yeah. Well, did you have anything else to say about Avatar?
I just had one thing. It wasn't even specifically for this episode. I was just hoping it would have just brought up real quick. Mm-hmm. I think it was the previous episode to the finale episodes where Katara and Zuko go out to confront her mother's killer.
Oh, yeah, good episode.
And great episode.
I mean, even that was more compelling than parts of the very last episode. Mm-hmm. Yeah, anyway.
Well, she uses blood bending, and Zuko looks at her like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I just wanted a little bit more that came from that, you know?
Yeah.
Like, because that's a very dark bending type.
Yeah.
And
like, how did that make
it was like just as what Zuko would have thought about it.
What Zuko would have thought about it, or maybe even how it made her feel. I mean,
it was.
Yeah.
It was just kind of left also, you know.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. Like, Zuko was probably wondering, like, what the heck that was. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, who do I have on my team here?
Exactly.
I think from Katara's perspective, it's more okay that they didn't say her thoughts, just because she does end up deciding when she actually does confront the actual killer that this isn't what she wants to do, and she does come to realize that. But yeah, it was kind of, you know, Katara's scary in that episode because you see what she's capable of, and she sees what she's capable of. I would have liked to, yeah, again, I don't think it was super necessary for me, but it could have been good to have just like a little bit more of like, how did she feel about that? Or again, Zuko as well. You know, maybe he could have confronted her like, "What are you doing?" And you know. So I understand that. Yeah. But you know, and I'm sure there's other little things throughout the show that maybe could have used a little bit more explanation that we're not even thinking of. But really, for those last episodes, you just want to have like that solid.
I want to be more solid.
You know, you want it to be more solid. And again, you know, the last battle looked very cool, but I think maybe one reason why I didn't find it as compelling as something like the invasion, even though I maybe didn't realize at that time, is that because you don't feel like you have those stakes as much.
Yes, stakes.
There is a lot of just luck, a lot of deus ex machina. Again, it just comes into it with the rock, with the energy bending, with the lion turtle, you know,
and even Sokka and Toph taking out the Air Force was like, just like it was super easy.
I don't think that really bothered me as much. I think it's the worst for Aang because he is the main character and he should experience the most growth. Even if, so with him having to choose whether or not he's going to kill Ozai, and I had said at the time that I was glad that he was able to find a peaceful way and stay true to himself, but he had to use that through the energy bending. So we either needed a better build up to the energy building, like we were saying, or perhaps, you know, that didn't happen. Perhaps he did actually have to kill Ozai. And then even that could have been an interesting, then seeing how does he cope with those emotions. That could have also been a different way for him to grow, because sometimes you do have to kill the bad guy to protect the millions of other people. Which, again, I'm not upset that it went with he was able to do the peaceful way. They just needed to set it up better, in my opinion. So,
I agree with that.
Yeah. But, well, any further thoughts? Okay, well, I think that we're good on that. My eyes are doing crazy things. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I don't think there's anything else. So again, overall, Avatar is a great show. I would definitely actually rewatch it in the future at some point, which I don't say about a lot of things. So I do think it's a really solid show. A lot of good world building. I think as you watched it more times, you would definitely see more details. You know, even some of this ending stuff was stuff that like Adam had pointed out to me. It's like, oh yeah, like I kind of see that now. Like how they could have done a little bit better with that. But very solid show. Great world building. You know, love Cabbage Man. Love my man Boomy. love Zuko and Iroh, and some really solid characters with some really good growth. So lots and lots and lots of really good things to say about this series.
I don't even think we got like a reunion with Boomy and Aang.
Are they not? Oh, are they not together? No. White Lotus. Does he see them, or is he separated at that point?
I don't think there's no. It just feel like after the fight, like it just went straight to the
I don't remember.
big ceremony. I don't
I
remember
don't remember, so I can't
reunion.
comment. I don't remember. I don't remember, honestly, so I won't comment on that. But at any rate, yeah, lots of good characters, lots of really good moments and emotional moments throughout the series. So I love it. You still love it.
Oh, absolutely.
we still love it. But we just wanted to share our honest thoughts on the conclusion and some things that we liked and some things that we think, from a storyteller perspective, could have been done a little bit better. But yeah, again, great show. So glad we were able to share this with you guys. And right now we're doing The Witcher. So if you guys still want things to watch, we're doing that. And who knows what will come after Avatar. But I have a Patreon now. And I honestly am not sure by the time this video goes out if the voting on the next show will be complete or not. So it might not be. So go check out my Patreon. We're recording this a couple weeks in advance, and I have to set all that up still. But I will be setting up a very simple Patreon just so that you guys can vote on the next show. I do 2 shows at a time, so there will be a list of shows that I'm interested in to vote off of after I'm done with The Witcher, and there will be a list of shows to vote on as to what I'm watching after Avatar. If you've seen my other videos, you know that The Legend of Korra is not in that list. That will probably be in a future list. But right now, I'm just going to take a break from the world of Avatar and just let it settle and
That's a good idea.
Just enjoy my time I've had in there. But yeah, you can go vote on that if you want to. Otherwise, if you're new here, subscribe, drop a like. That helps other people find the video. If you did enjoy this video today, comment anything you want to about Avatar, because show's over now, so there's no spoilers. You can literally talk about anything that I might have missed or anything that you want to. And on that note, thank you so much for being here as always. Happy watching, and we will see you in our next video. Bye.
Goodbye.